Okay, it is Tuesday, October the 9th, and this is week 2 of Introduction to Criminal Justice. And I hope that you're grasping the concepts of what's going on. I've heard from a few of you this past week. You didn't have a written assignment except the quiz, and I gave you the open house that gave you my expectations for the quarter. And then we're going to have our first written assignment for this week coming up. That'll be due this Sunday. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this. I do want to say this at the outset. Some of you don't understand how the keyword operates. Make sure that you give the keyword that I mentioned during the course of the lecture. That is to be put in the Dropbox for the live lecture section, and that's how I know that you actually participated in the lecture. I do see names of people, but I also require that you provide the same thing too. All right, so make sure you do that, and you have until Sunday to do that. And if you do it after Sunday, you'll lose 1 point. If you do it Tuesday, you'll lose 2 points. If you do it Wednesday, 3 points. So basically, the point of the matter is to get it done as soon as you possibly can. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen here. Last week I gave you details about myself and what I have gone through, and so I'm not going to continue to cover that. I gave you the instructor information. I talked about these various resources, so I'm not going to talk about those again. So I'm going to go right down all the way to live lecture. As you can see, this is week 2, 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m., which means that we will be over by 8 o'clock in most instances. That'll be for week 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you'll see when we get to week 6, we got a ways to go there, but it'll go pretty fast. Make sure that you provide me the keyword, very important. The archive is right here. You can click on it, and it'll lead you to the open house. Same thing will be for week 2 that you will see, okay? So again, you have some things that'll help you. They're still listed here, but I'm going to go right to this week's announcement. Module 2, Criminal Law and Procedure, Criminal Law and Purpose, and Organization of Law Enforcement is the topic for this week. And chapters 3 and 4 of the textbook, which I also have sent you the PowerPoints. The PowerPoints are to help you to summarize the chapter, provides information. It is not a substitute for reading the chapter. And then complete the activity, lecture notes, purpose of law, policing, purpose, organization, and policing strategies. And then point of view videos, as well as the practice activity, okay? Then your discussion posts, which are due tonight, your initial posts, dealing with criminal laws, and several of you have written some really nice posts. And then your reply posts will be due Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Make sure that your posts are detailed. One-liners will cause you to lose points. So you want to make sure that you have the information in there so that you can get all of your points. So the key thing is look at the rubric. There's a rubric for discussion. It's down at the bottom here. There it is right there. And you want to click on that and make sure you're satisfied. And then look at the syllabus. The syllabus also talks about the content for discussion posts as well. Finally, complete the written assignment, policing strategies, and then the quiz. I do recommend that you do the quiz at the end of the week, so that you will have gone through the material. It is a time quiz, and it's 10 questions, so you want to make sure that you take time. And then my motto, adversity is a springboard to success. You know what that is all about. And I want you to continue to focus and be strong throughout the course. If you have any issues, let me know contemporaneously when they happen. Don't wait till later. Okay, let's look at the course calendar again, which you should be familiar with by now. And let's see, I got some extra stuff in there. Let's take out the 115. And now it should be just, okay, there we go. So here we are, week 2, and it gives you a reading assignment, the information that I just shared with you. It tells you your initial post, your live lecture, your reply post, your written assignments. One student asked me, why are there 4 in here? It's because if you look at what this does, the one that gives the time, it just tells you the time that these assignments are due. That's a check off automatically because it's in your rubric to tell you when the assignment is due. So it tells that this assignment is due the written police policies, strategies. So if you look up here, well, let's see, that's the quiz. Okay, if you look at here, then you'll see, oops, written police policy should be up here. Here we go. Written police policies. Let's put that there. Okay, so now you have it right there. So it should be there now. That's the quiz, double checking. Here we go, police policies. So it tells you the written assignment as well. Okay, and that's due the 14th, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, so now let's go to the module. No, let's go to the module. And again, let's see the assignment. Policing strategies, that's the exact title of it. So policing strategies is the written assignment for number 2, okay? And the requirements are set out. It's a 1 to 2 page paper. Make sure you run your papers through Grammarly. Some of you have had the issue. Make sure you run it through Grammarly. And then there's the rubric. You can find the rubric here, or you can find the rubric here. It's a little different. It's the same thing, basically. Tells you, again, there's that due date. That's why you see that check mark on the calendar. I just combine the 10 points together for the sections. So 20 points for the whole thing to get this right, okay? Satisfy these requirements. And then your grammatical aspects of it. okay? And then the other thing is APA citations. You can lose 2 points for not doing that. In most classes, you lose 5. But in this introduction class, because many of you are new, then you lose just 1. You lose 2 points. So it's important that you get this down. Okay. So that's that. So we exit the rubric. And again, if you click on here, it'll show you basically the same thing. It both equal to 25 points. And in your grade book, you'll see the rubric as well. The one that says points possible at the top. Again, it's not 2 different rubrics. It's just that you can see a different way it looks. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so now, see, I added these 2 together. That's what's happening. It includes specific examples of community policing. So I just added all 3 together. So you get 10 and 10. So that's a total of 20. And then the 3 points, this is exactly the same thing as the other. Okay, for a total of 25 points. All right. So let's move that out of the way. Let's pull that down there. Okay. Okay, now let's go back to Firefox. Okay, let's get out of this one. Okay, let's go back to the classroom and stop sharing. Okay, so now we're back there. So now let's go back to Firefox. All right, so now we're back where we were a few minutes ago. Let me move this back up here, make it smaller. Okay, so now this is the written assignment that is due on Sunday. Okay, then you go down here and you'll see the next thing is your discussion post. Now, remember, when you're doing your policing strategies, you have this guide that can help you. I already shared this with you last week, and it has the tabs for the written assignment again, the online library, the APA to help you with that, and then tutoring and writing lab. If you have issues with Grammarly or something like that, let's see, there's somebody's mic that's open. Let's see. Yeah, somebody has an open mic. I don't know who that is. Then your discussion posts, and then, of course, your quiz. Again, make sure, 16, I said 10 questions. This is 16 questions, 40-minute quiz. And you're going to make sure that you take your time and do the exam. And again, I recommend that it be done at the end of the week when you've gone through all the material. Okay. So now let's get right into the lesson itself, where I'm going to talk to you about a few things here. Again, let me move this up out of the way. Make it a little smaller. Okay, that's all right. It won't move. So we're going to talk about law and order in society, the classification terminology that's used in criminal cases, what definitions of crime, elements of a criminal offense, some defenses that might arise, and how the evolution of law enforcement agencies came about. And so we're going to talk about those things. So again, repeating what the assignments are. You get down here, there they are again. You got a practice activity, and then you got that quiz there. Okay. So now let's look at what we have here in terms of the lecture notes. And you dealing with this issue here, why do we have laws? You guys are pretty good with that. Your book is very good with laying it out. It lays it out quite clearly here in this section. Protection for people. It also provides also the rights of individuals as well. So it protects society as well as the individual. And I always tell people that there's another word for laws. Can you think of another word for the word laws? You can type it in the chat box and I'll see it. Can you think of another word for laws? What else would you call them? Can you think of anything? Give me another word for the word laws. There you go. That's it. That's it. Exactly. It's rules. And that's what it is. Rules. Guidelines to protect you, to safety. Like, for example, you all know that the reason why there are stop signs and the reason that there are stop lights is to protect people on the road. Why are there speed limits? Safety. Same thing. And all these kinds of things. And then if you will learn this, that in terms of the criminal law itself, that those that are involved with property such as theft, and then when you get into theft or either, for example, forgery or something like that, that's property violation of copyrights and all those kind of things. But then when you get into crimes against individuals, those are the most serious, such as armed robbery, burglary. Now, burglary is a crime against property, but in order to have an individual who is protected from burglary is because it's their home. It's the place where you should be secure. And so, therefore, even if an individual is not present, there is an expectation of privacy for those individuals, whether they're there or not. So it's kind of like a hybrid. It's a mix between a law against property, but it's primarily intended to protect the person. Then if you go into and a person is present in there and you commit burglary, then it elevates itself to a more serious offense called home invasion. And so that you'll notice that the sentencing gets to be more severe and longer when you deal with hurting an individual as opposed to damaging someone's property. Arson is a serious offense, but if there's someone in the place and it happens, it becomes aggravated arson from that particular point. So it says here, criminal laws are rules and regulations that criminalize behavior. Lets us know. You should be aware that in order for a criminal law to be violated, you must have the ability to be able to know about it. Now, I'm not saying that you have knowledge of the law like a lawyer, but you must have the ability to be able to know. For example, you can't violate a criminal law and then someone writes the law after it happens, because there was no law in the place. A law that's written after something takes place and you try to prosecute a person who committed an offense before that is called what? Do you know what kind of law we call that? a Latin phrase. You know what we call those kind of laws? So what you did was not criminal at the time, but then later on you're prosecuted for what you did before. Not that you did again after the law was written in the statute. What do we call those? Anybody know? It's also a constitutional issue. Any takes? Okay. Okay. No takes? Okay. You know what we call those? We call those ex post facto laws. Have you ever heard of that before? You should find that in your materials. Ex post facto. EX, and then the word post, P-O-S-T, facto, F-A-C-T-O, which you see the English language in there. Ex is after, post is after, facto. So it's after the fact. So it's something that happened, okay? Just like you say, your ex-friend, your ex-spouse. That means former, okay? So post facto. So that means a law that's passed. It's unconstitutional because you're not on notice of the law, okay? So the law, it comes about from legislation primarily, and when it comes to criminal law, statutes, but the Constitution is the underpinning thing. The United States Constitution in many states have jurisdiction of that. As you should know, the legislators, which is on the federal level, the House, which consists of 435 people, and the Senate consists of 100. Then you have one from D.C. Then you have also, at the same time, individuals who, and that's the ones who pass the laws. On the state level, you have the same kind of thing. And then you have the enforcers of the law. That's the governor, the president, and law enforcement fits under that aspect of it. And then you have those who determine what the law is or interpret the law. That's known as the courts. And the United States Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, and each state has its own Supreme Court as well. So there is this phrase here, no one is above the law. That means everybody, from the president on down. Now, you can't prosecute the president for crimes if the president violates the law. You can't take a state or federal law. But there is a process. Does anybody know what that process is called for dealing with the President of the United States? You type that in. Yep, exactly. Thank you. It is impeachment. Impeachment. That's right, Chrissy. Exactly. And so the point of the matter is that everybody should have to obey the law. Okay. So now we talked about the fact that one element of the law that is enforced on all levels, federal, state, and local. Well, we talked about the three branches already and how it's done. The law enforcement officers, their title tells you exactly what they do. They enforce the laws. However, they must do so within the realm of the United States Constitution. Now, you recall that I sent you the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, and it's also located on your course homepage. But the ones that really play pretty much in the criminal law area, in criminal justice, is the 4th, the 6th, and the 8th Amendment. The 4th Amendment deals with search and seizure. The 6th Amendment involves a right to counsel, right to jury trial. The Eighth Amendment deals with cruel and unusual punishment, and it also deals with the right to reasonable bail. Not the right to bail, but the right to reasonable bail, because there are instances when bail does not have to be granted. And so the law enforcement agencies, you got on the federal level, the Drug Enforcement Agency, known as the DNA, the IRS, everybody knows that's Internal Revenue Service, Department of Homeland Securities, DHS. That's what, and actually DHS is a relatively new agency of these three, because the DHS came about after September 11th, when Homeland Securities was created. The FBI has been around, Federal Bureau of Investigation has been around a long time and deals with violations of federal law. They also will assist state jurisdictions in situations because they have some of the best resources for investigating cases. So your state, you have your state troopers, you have your state or state police as they're called, highway patrol, same thing. You have your sheriffs. Your sheriffs generally are considered by a county, and then again you have your various village or municipal police departments that enforce the laws within the limits of their cities and municipalities. So we are at a point now where it talks about the main mission. What's the main mission of the police? To serve and protect. We basically use that here in Chicago, to serve and protect. And so what are we being protected against? Criminal offenders, to prevent crimes, establish public safety, reduce the fear in communities, to provide ways that people totally understand that if they transgress the law, that they will serve a penalty. So one of the debates, as we look at this, it says, is that the authority of law enforcement regarding public safety and dealing with individual rights. Well, we talked about that last week. And I went on record and said and stated that throughout my years as a lawyer, as a political science major, I have learned that it is important that we don't just have law enforcement dealing with the issue of taking individual rights away. So the issue or the debate comes about as relates to public safety. Yes, we want public safety, but at the same time, there must be a balance of individual rights. The Constitution cannot be put aside in favor of us dealing with safety. Now, there are some debates about some of the laws. For example, one of the laws that is in debate about whether or not our individual rights are being infringed on is the Patriot Act that came about after September 11th, in which some of the rules relating to the Fourth Amendment are a bit different. But the reason those rules are different is that individuals are in need of protection because of the terroristic activities that are taking place on a daily basis. Now, I'm not talking about violent crime. I'm talking about on mass levels, such as school shootings, such as what happened in Vegas and what happened in Oklahoma City, what happened September the 11th, those kinds of things. But here's the deal. The average citizen, most of us who are not criminals or have a propensity to commit violent activities are not going to be dealt with under that. We have wiretapping laws that before you actually can get the right to wiretap anybody, there must be a judicial hearing. And wiretaps are not just something that can be utilized. So I'm saying this to you, is that for the most part, and I'd say 99.99% of our rights are protected. Now, we have some issues. For example, you heard the President of the United States say yesterday, if you listen to the news very carefully, addressing the violence in Chicago, he says that the Chicago police need to return to utilizing stop and frisk. Well, you guys should be familiar with stop and frisk involving Terry versus Ohio, and you should understand that that stop is for the a brief stop, is based on reasonable suspicion, and it is not based upon probable cause. And that the purpose of it is to stop an individual briefly, ask some questions, and then if you do conduct a search, it has to be a pat down. Now, if, for example, it appears that that person has a weapon, then the probable cause may be established from that particular point. But here is the problem that has happened with stop and frisk laws, particularly when applied here in Chicago, is that it was there were too many instances that there was racial profiling that took place. And so the individuals in government, it was determined by the American Civil Liberties Union, and a consent decree was entered into by the city of Chicago law enforcement, that we were overstepping our boundaries and those kinds of things. Also, there were some attempts that I'm familiar with, and there's a few cases that we've discussed, not in this class, but we'll discuss when you get the introduction to criminal law, that involve an attempt to try to stop gang activity. And one of those things had to do with passing laws that said individuals who were a certain number, maybe 3 or more, that were gathered together, and there was the possibility or the appearance that there may be some criminal activity, could allow police to, stop those individuals. That was unconstitutional. And the reason why is because of the fact that you can't presume, just because there's groups of people or young people standing on the corner. You have it every morning. We have it every morning where I live. That's called the bus stop. And sometimes people are gathering to catch a bus, a public bus, not just a school bus. The bottom line is that, again, you violated the First Amendment right or gathering of the people coming together. You violated their Fourth Amendment right of search and seizure in those situations as well. The Sixth Amendment, getting into that again, you have a right to counsel, as has been established a long time ago through the case of Gideon versus Wainwright. And that's a landmark case that, once again, you will find in your materials, that said that individuals who are charged with crimes in which they could be incarcerated, possibly, are entitled to counsel. And they should have the effective assistance of counsel as well. And then further on, that the right to a jury trial. A jury trial. Now, that jury trial exists in all criminal cases, except it doesn't apply in juvenile cases. And that's because of there's a difference in how juvenile laws are interpreted and applied. When you take Introduction to Corrections, you'll have sections that we talk about that as well. So anyway, the point of the matter, and then we get to the Eighth Amendment again, cruel and unusual punishment. A question is the death penalty cruel and unusual punishment? Is it constitutionally cruel and unusual punishment? Yes or no? Is the death penalty cruel and unusual punishment on a constitutional level? Yes or no? What do you think? I'm not asking what you think it is, but is it, to your understanding, a violation of the Constitution, the death penalty? Yes or no? Nobody? Type in the chat box. Okay, Stephanie says no. Stephanie, Carrie Ann says she thinks it violates it. Okay, the answer is what Stephanie said. The answer is no, it does not. Here's what happened. Furman versus Georgia is a famous case that came out, I believe, in '72, that said that the death penalty be applied under certain procedures and processes, but that it doesn't reach the level of violating the Eighth Amendment of cruel and unusual punishment. Now, what has happened is that many of the states have either eliminated the death penalty or either have the procedures of Furman versus Georgia in and still have the death penalty. Such as Illinois, we don't have a death penalty. But the reason why some jurisdictions, such as Illinois, did away with the death penalty is because of the fact that it was determined. You all are familiar with the wrongful conviction cases now that are popping up everywhere, where individuals have served 20 years and above, or 15 years, anyway, long prison terms, and then because the advent of DNA, it has been determined very clearly that that person didn't commit the offense. Well, those people were on death row prior to that in some instances, and they were headed toward the death penalty. So therefore, imagine what that would mean. If you, and our position is this, if we execute one innocent person, that's one too many, because it's not reversible. And so as a result, the answer is you may not agree with the death penalty, but it is still not unconstitutional. I will say my position, and you might be surprised what my position is, knowing what I went through as a person, and this was even before I became a defense lawyer, is I have been anti the death penalty because I believe that individuals incarcerated for life actually suffer more than those with the death penalty. And then it's been established very clearly that the death penalty itself does not have a deterring effect on individuals committing crime. Only one that deters is that one individual. So my point, and that's the same thing that can occur if they're locked up for life, but they're put out of their misery, so to speak. And so as a result, I am in favor of life sentences for crimes when individuals commit those, as opposed to the death penalty. So anyway, the law enforcement agencies are responsible for making sure that they protect you. And then at the bottom here it says, now what is happening is law enforcement agencies are reaching out to the community. And there's this concept called community policing. And what it involves is to get the citizens in the community to take an active role. And I think that is a good decision, because as you and I are well aware, there's a lot of distrust of law enforcement. And so it is important that that the communities bridge and establish watch groups, utilizing resources to help the neighborhood. Everyone has the responsibility. Here in Chicago, unfortunately, a young kid, 2 years old, a couple of days ago, yesterday I think it was with someone and is now dead because someone fired a shot. They probably weren't firing it at the 2-year-old, but the kid is dead. And someone knows who that individual is. So what does that mean? This code of silence that people always talk about with law enforcement, there's a code of silence in the area where individuals commit crime, and people have to learn to speak up because, as I already heard stated, and I absolutely agree, that if you allow criminals to intimidate you, they will continue doing those things. So the partnership of the community and the citizens working with the police provide a good way to protect the community. Also, you are aware, and some of you are, I can tell because some of you mentioned it in your comments. Here in Illinois, we just recently had a police officer who had been indicted a few years ago, and finally went to trial, and a jury found this police officer guilty of second-degree murder and aggravated battery with a firearm. It's called the Laquan McDonald case. Some of you are familiar with it, but it's a national case because this is the first time in the history of Illinois for the last 50 years, as far as I can recall, that a police officer has been successfully prosecuted for an excessive force situation. That in itself is a requirement that law enforcement must understand. As remember it said earlier, no one is above the law, and that includes people who carry the badge. And so that decision, though it's open for appeal, as somebody said, I said that all cases are under appeal. Every case that I ever had, and I represented somebody where somebody was found guilty, and most of my clients were found not guilty, but in cases where we had some where people didn't follow my advice and we ended up, instead of accepting a plea, ended up taking it to trial, I automatically filed a notice of appeal for those individuals because it's a procedural process. So anyway, the bottom line is that it is a good thing for the community to feel secure with law enforcement and not to be fearful of law enforcement, and that law enforcement has to respect, as we talked about, diversity of the community itself. The departments now are becoming more diverse. There are more females, there are more Hispanics, there are more African American, and so they did away with those height restrictions years ago that eliminated the ability for many people who would make good police officers to become police officers. So the bottom line is that those kind of things. And then they finally talk about the meet and greet, which is part of the community meeting with police. I guess in the past, when I was a kid, the only time we knew about the police other than when they were coming up for a criminal case was officer friendly. And but now we're learning more with these community policing. There are community service officers who actually try to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community, because, like I said again, it has to be a partnership in order to combat crime. And so that's what I wanted to share with you concerning the organization policing strategies that are taking place. It is a good thing that the direction of community policing is taking place. Okay, now I'm going to take a few minutes, and we got, let's see, okay, we got about 15 minutes. So I'm going to give you a chance to look at these videos, but I'm going to take out my headset because you won't be able to hear them. My headset is out, so you should still be able to hear me, but I'm going to put this video on a sheriff's point of view so you can take a look at this.
My name is Chris Nacco, Sheriff of Pasco County, Florida, and started after I went to University of Delaware and got my undergrad master's degree there. I started with the Philadelphia Public School Police. From there, I moved to Fairfax County, Virginia, as a police officer there. I was involved with the sniper incident, the response to 9/11, and numerous attacks in the D.C. area. From that point on, I moved to Broward County, Florida. I was a deputy in Broward County. Area called Oakland Park was our division, which funded up to Fort Lauderdale. Spent some time there. Actually, had a chance, opportunity. I left the Broward Sheriff's Office, and I worked in the Florida Legislature for 4 years. Worked for Speaker Rubio. I was his deputy chief of staff. Worked on issues besides criminal justice, domestic security, public safety issues. Got involved with transportation and economic development. So it gave me a little bit broader view of things throughout the state of Florida. From there, I was the chief of staff for the Florida Highway Patrol. Spent time in that agency working on reorganization issues and intelligence, about creating an intelligence program that was statewide with all state law enforcement agencies and with the federal agencies. From that point, being the chief of staff for the Florida Highway Patrol, my heart was always back in local law enforcement where I began and where I always wanted to be. So I came back down to Pasco Sheriff's Office. I've been here for several years, and in May, I was fortunate to be appointed by the governor to be the next sheriff when Sheriff White stepped down. We have typical, like any other sheriff's office, we have a chief deputy who's our colonel, Brian Head. From that point, we have our patrol division. We have a major who oversees patrol. He has 3 districts. We have a major who oversees detention. That's the detention bureau, but also is court services, warrants, our civil process unit, and we also have a detective. He's a captain who's in charge of all detectives, but the detective bureau is also incorporates our school resource officers, our intelligence police unit, and our detective bureau. And then we have another captain who oversees basically a support, we call strategic services side of it, where it's our communication, our volunteer corps, our crime prevention unit, our UCR unit. And so he has numerous different components within that area. We also have our administrative branch, which has our lawyers, that has the fleet management, property and evidence, budgeting. That's basically the nuts and bolts of the foundation, and they're the ones who support and make sure the rest of us are properly running right. There's 440 that are law enforcement. We have a little over roughly 300 in detention right now, detention side of it. All in all, with grant-funded positions, we're at 1,300 employees in the Sheriff's Office. We have 30 zones, so you think about it, at any one time, you have at least 30 deputies out there, and we probably have an extra 10, which would be supervisors, and then we'd also have our Omega squads, which are our STAR units, which are strategic targeting enforcement units. So roughly at any point, you have about 50 people out there, 50 to 60 deputies out there. One of the things that we've done in the Sheriff's Office the past couple months is we've started breaking down the barriers between the municipalities and the Sheriff's Office. One of the big things that has plagued law enforcement for years is ego. It's the ego that, law enforcement agencies want to prove that they're the best of the best, and it could be 2 agencies working side by side, and they want to take credit for arresting somebody. It comes down to ego, and that's deteriorated our profession for years and hasn't allowed us to move forward. So one of the things we've done within our Sheriff's Office, with our chiefs of police, we meet very regularly now. Our cases, if we have a bank robbery that lies on one side of a jurisdiction, we call the detectives from the other side to help us work it, because we know the criminals know no boundaries, so neither should we. So we're constantly working side by side with the 4 municipalities within Pasco County, but it also goes beyond that. We're working at the Sheriff's Offices with our surrounding jurisdiction, our federal agencies. We don't have the resources anymore to be a standalone, we can do everything ourselves. Economically, we can't do it, but also because criminals are floating from one county to the next, one state to another. So that's why it's imperative that we work side by side with our federal partners, local partners, and state partners. I think it's a trend that's going across the country because we don't have the ability to be a solo agency. I mean, I think there's numerous things that have changed law enforcement in the past decade or so. First and foremost was 9/11. Before 9/11, we never really considered terrorism to be a law enforcement function, a local law enforcement function. But we are the first and foremost people out there. The terrorists were living in our communities, they were amongst us. So it is imperative that law enforcement take that side of the investigation to realize that when you're making a traffic stop, you may not just be stopping somebody for speeding. You may be stopping a person that's trying to blow up a building. The other side of it is the response side. Local law enforcement has to be prepared at all times to respond to any type of situation. Let it be a foreign terrorist or a domestic terrorist or a lone wolf that wants to go into a workplace or a school and commit a mass murder. Those are those type of things law enforcement now has to be prepared for. It's basically a part of our job description that after 9/11 went to the top of the list and is a top priority that every law enforcement agency needs to be prepared for. The second thing is our economy. We've hit a point now where we have to take some examples from the business community on how to act. Public safety is very unique from any other agency. In fact, this is the first and foremost role of government is to protect the citizens. But at the same time, when our citizens don't have the money, when the tax structure isn't set up to support public safety, we have to find out different revenues and different ways which we can work together to be more efficient. And if it comes down to working side by side with our municipal partners, that's the right thing to do, not only because of fiscal dollars, but because it's protecting our citizens. If it's a way that we can, stretch out our resources better, that's one thing. That's another way we have to do it. One of the things we have just recently done in Pasco County is we had 2 SWAT teams, one in the city of Newport Richey and one for our sheriff's office. The problem was, we always were working together, but at the same time, we weren't truly one team. So what we did was we dropped the egos. We didn't worry about what patch you're wearing on your shoulder. We said, we're going to create one SWAT team for the county. We deputized the police officers out of Newport Richey, which gained them access to be law enforcement officers throughout the entire county. Now, it goes back to twofold of public safety and saving money. The public safety side of it is now we have a 55-person SWAT team. With 55 people, we broke it up into 2 teams of black and gold. But when people think about special operations and SWAT, they just think, okay, you have a situation, you send the SWAT team in and they take care of it and everything's done. But in all reality, if you have a major incident like a school shooting or hostage situation, that it's a standoff and it's a very complicated scene, not only is one team holding a perimeter, you have to have another team or 2 other teams, one for reserve and one to practice the breaching and to secure the situation. So you need those resources to handle a situation. The other side of it is you go to the economic side of it. When you have 55 people on a SWAT team, you're roughly going to have at least 10 people on duty at all times that are SWAT certified. If there's an incident that, they have a warrant that they need a SWAT team at, instead of calling somebody off duty to come in to help serve that warrant, now we have people that are on duty that can respond to a situation, take care of that warrant, and go back on duty. So we're not spending any more money on overtime calling people out to a scene. So more and more you start realizing that functionality, it works better because we're doing more to protect our citizens. We're prepared for any threat to our county. Economically, it makes sense because the amount of money that you spend on overtime, calling somebody in, but even delaying the scene. Before you have to call somebody at their house, hey, can you get out of bed? Can you leave your kid's soccer game to come to a scene? Now we're already behind the 8 ball an hour or 2. So this is a better response, it's a better situation for all of us in Pasco County. There's a couple things that we're hoping to find as a Pasco Sheriff's Office. First and foremost is servant leadership. What we want to do within our command staff and within all our deputies out there is show servant leadership. The fact that if you're a supervisor, you care more about the people you serve than about yourself. And then that transcends onto our more and more, in law enforcement, we never took education seriously enough that we said this is a priority. But now we're telling everybody, go back and get your degrees. Go back and learn, because the more you learn, the better you are. The more you see that our world is, as the book says, our world is flat. More and more, our world is intricate in the fact that everything blends together. We are no longer black and white law enforcement. We arrest somebody, we put them in jail, and that's it. We're done. Now, we're dealing with the highest end bankers, world leaders, and at the other side of the spectrum, we're dealing with transients. And so our law enforcement officers have to be able to deal from one end of the spectrum to the other. So we're pushing education. We're pushing the fact, we sit there with our deputies. If they're on the traffic stop, they're in detention, just walk up to them and say, hey, what can we do to help you? And we all constantly hear the same things over, wish we had more pay, wish we had more deputies. We understand that, but they understand that too. But then you start going to little things. It's the little things that matter. And they'll say, hey, can we change this general order to do this? Can we make this happen? Can we do that? And we can tweak little things. And you start realizing, in any type of organization, when you get buy-in from your members, and it's the little things that you can change to make their lives better, that's what they want. So that's what we're doing. And it comes down to the fact, if we make a command decision change, a general order change, we send it out to our deputies first and say, give us your input. Because in law enforcement, people realize very quickly that they come up with a stigma that, command staff make decisions and we're forced to live them. Well, it shouldn't be that way. Let's all make a decision together. If it's life and death, it's a chain of command. We make decisions very quickly. But if we can sit down and methodically talk about it and get buy-in, that makes the organization better. People are happy to be here. And when you're competing against other law enforcement agencies for positions, for deputies, for members, you want people to come to the place where they feel like they're valued. They feel like their input matters. And that's what they're going to get past the sheriff's office. The other thing we've headed towards is, we've moved towards intelligence-led policing. Traditional law enforcement, we know, is not working anymore. And we realize that, the amount of calls that keep coming in, the issues that we're facing are multiplying. And society now uses their cell phone more than they will go to their next door neighbor and say, hey, can you lower your music? I have a problem. They're going to call this cell phone and say, I need law enforcement. Law enforcement that takes care of basically everybody's problems today. But what we need to realize in law enforcement is we don't have the resources to do that. Our job is to make our citizens safe. So with intelligence-led policing, we're starting to realize we can't handle the mass amount of calls. But what we need to do is figure out what is causing people to call. What are the crimes out there that are creating the problems throughout our society? And there's a statistic that roughly states 6% of the criminals commit 60% of the crime. So what we're starting to do is we're going to target those 6% of the criminals. We're having our deputies go out there on a traffic stop on a call that would, quote unquote, be called trivial. Dig deeper into that call. Go out there onto a situation where somebody ran over a mailbox and talk to the citizens. What's being in the mailbox? Start asking that citizen, hey, what else is going on in your neighborhood? Who's causing you problems? Because, we used to have a traditional law enforcement, we were report takers. And the box would beep, the dispatcher would say, go to 123 ABC Street. You have a call, somebody's purse was stolen, and you need to take a report. You go take the report, write the information down, and forget about it, and then send it in. That was pretty much it. That was your call, and you go to the next call. I said law enforcement has to change now, where we go to a call where somebody's purse is stolen. I want to answer questions. It may not even be about the purse. It can be about other things that are going on, and they start giving us more information. It could be a warrant. You may say do a traffic stop, and somebody has a warrant for failure to appear in court. Well, once you start talking to that person in your car and you're driving to the jail, you may find out that this person knows information about a homicide. They have information about people who are committing robberies. For us, we have to be out there. We have to be like the CIA now and start gathering information. That information starts being crafted into intelligence. Once we gather that intelligence, we're able to go after that 6% of the population that's committing 60% of the crime. We have to utilize business skills and the fact that time equals money. And when you utilize your time properly, you get the best buck for your dollar. And that's what we're going to do, is become more efficient in our operations. But it only goes
Okay, that's the sheriff's point of view. I'm not going to go through this one. You can take your time because it's 8 o'clock already. It's 8:01. But if you want a career in law enforcement, take time to look at this video, the chief of police point of view. You get a chance, just click on it and take a look at it. Then finally, you have your practice sessions. I already told you how those work. You want to go through, this will help you to prepare for the quiz. And you go through this and you provide your answer, and then you can then click in next, and it'll tell you what the answers are. So that's it for today. I do want to say to each of you that the key word or phrase I'm looking for is law enforcement. That's it. Law enforcement. So if you have any questions or concerns or issues with the assignments, the things I shared with you today, I kind of gave you some explanation about a lot of the stuff that you're reading in terms of my experience. I will say this to you. If you will recognize again, one of the things that sheriff said that's very important, and we keep saying this, is education is the direction that law enforcement is heading in. And you guys have made the right decision to continue with your education, get your associate, and then moving forward even to get your bachelor's, because that's where agencies are looking to have people. And you want to climb up in the ranks of law enforcement, then get your education. And I already said that my goal in teaching this class is to produce individuals who are educational, who are professional, who recognize and understand that what we need more than anything are educated, ethical, and professional criminal justice. And so that applies to the point that we talked about today. So with that, I'm going to say good night to each of you, and I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. So good night. You're welcome.